Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and review here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some injury updates from the past couple of days, some training camp cuts, some waiver updates. We got a few pieces of news to talk about, plus we got a couple of trade rumors involving the Blackhawks, Devils, and the Colorado Avalanche. We'll get to all three of these trade rumors and all the other updates regarding in this video coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this for all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, as per usual, we got another news and rumor review here to discuss. I would usually start off by talking about some signings, but there was only one signing we saw from our past couple of days, and I'm touching on that in a separate video I'll have coming out either later today or potentially in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that video that's going to be coming out, but there's no signings here at this point to talk about. So we're going to start off with a couple of injury updates regarding players from around the NHL. So first, in the Minnesota Wild organization, Zuccarello is now out at least 7 to 8 weeks with a lower body injury. So it sounded like Zuccarello was going to miss the start of the season, and now it seems like he's going to be out for a couple of months. So that's a bad blow there for the Wild. Zuccarello's a solid top 6 forward, so seeing him be out for any length of period of time is bad. So that's going to be a huge blow to the Wild forward group. Then we saw Nils Hoglander be out 8 to 10 weeks with a sprained ankle. So that's an awful blow for the Canucks. Hoglander was going to be a solid top 9 forward, potentially take steps forward this year for the Vancouver Canucks, and now he's not going to be back until early to mid-December at the earliest. Like, that's a bad blow there for the Vancouver Canucks. That's a bad blow there. Alex Vlasic was cut on the leg with a skate blade, but should be able to start the season. So it doesn't seem like it was an overly bad cut. It did not look overly good in the preseason game, but good to see if Vlasic should be ready to go for the start of the season. Noah Ostlund is out week to week with an undisclosed injury for the Buffalo Sabres. Ostlund's having a pretty good training camp, so that injury is going to cut training camp time short and probably his chances of making the NHL team. So that's a bad blow there for Ostlund. Vince Dunn is out day-to-day with an undisclosed injury he suffered in a preseason game against the Calgary Flames. So hopefully Dunn's not going to be out for an overly long period of time. That's not a hugely significant injury, but bad blow there. See, Dunn's out for the time being. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen left a preseason game with a lower body injury, the same ailment that kept him out earlier in the preseason. So hopefully it's not a serious injury. I haven't seen any updates on that yet, but that's a bad blow there for Sabres to lose Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Matthew Wood in the National Predators organization is out week to week with lower body injuries. So he was a guy who came over from college late last season. He was a guy who had a strong chance to make the roster, so that's going to be a bad blow. He's going to be out for the first few weeks of the season. JT Miller is out day-to-day right now with an undisclosed injury, but should be back in the very near future, so it doesn't seem like it's an overly significant injury. And hopefully Miller will come back in the very near future. Jonathan Drouin is out day-to-day right now with an illness, and Oliver Bonk is out week to week with upper body injuries. So hopefully Drouin's not going to be out for an overly long period of time, put his Islanders debut in jeopardy. While Bonk's going to be out week to week, that's a bad blow there, and that probably does halt him from making the NHL team. So very interesting note there. And lastly, Rector Evans in the Seattle Kraken organization is out 6 to 8 weeks with upper body injuries. So that's a bad blow there for the Kraken. Evans was going to be a really solid top for the defense in this upcoming season. So to see him be out for the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, it's not going to be overly great news there for the Kraken. So very interesting injury updates from the past couple of days regarding guys like Zuccarello, Hoglander, Vlasic, Ostlund, Dunn, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Wood, Miller, Bonk, Evans, and Drouin. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to some training camp cuts as we've done over the past couple of videos. I'll be giving you the amount of players that each team has cut, plus some of the more significant names that were cut from each team in training camp. So over the past 2 days, Boston has cut 1 player from their training camp roster. Calgary has cut 11 players, including Brunicke, Grushnikov, Honjik, Stemogran, and Suniev to the AHL. Carolina cut 15 players, including moving Sora, Trikazov, Rybikin, Montgomery, and Nadeau to the AHL. Chicago cut Kevin Korchinski to the AHL. That's a little bit of a surprise. Korchinski, I thought, was definitely locked to be on the blue line, so he's going to start the season in the AHL. Colorado cut 4 players. Detroit cut 15 players, including moving Doucette to the AHL, and no surprise, but Carter Bear goes back to the WHL. Florida cut 3 players. Los Angeles cut 25 players, including moving William Greentree back to the OHL, and then they also moved Dvorak, Kirsanov, Pinelli, Portillo, Wright, Lawrence, and Zemer to the AHL. Minnesota cut 1 player. Nashville cut 7 players, including moving Reed Schaefer to the AHL. The Rangers cut 11 players, including moving Garant, McConnell Barker, Othman, and Terrence to the AHL. Othman's definitely a little bit surprised. I thought he was going to be a lock to make the roster. The Flyers cut 13 players, including moving Kolosov, Bjarnson, Bump, Barkley and Andrea to the AHL. I'm a little bit surprised Bump was cut. The San Jose Sharks cut 10 players, including moving Bystedt, Chernyshov, and Furlong to the AHL. Tampa cut 7 players, including moving Duke and Schmidt to the AHL. Utah cut 1 player. Washington cut 8 players, including moving Tarek Periskak back to the AHL, not too surprised there, and Cam Allen to the AHL. And Winnipeg cut 7 players, including moving Colby Barlow, Brendan Yeager, and Elias Salomonson to the AHL. Some very interesting cuts from our past couple of days. A couple of really big surprises, but some of those guys are more younger players who are most likely going to get cut anyways. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to the waiver update portion. So over the past 2 days, we saw a whole bunch of players on waivers. This included Clark Bishop, Kuznetsov, Dryden Hunt, and Sam Morton in Calgary, Skylar Brindamore, Ronan Seeley, Gavin Bayreuther, Noel Gunler, Josiah Slavin, and Ryan Suzuki in Carolina, Tompkins in Edmonton, Abuki Bell, Gleason, Jones, and Kierstead in Minnesota, Gravel, Lucchini, Mutter, Murray, and Osterley in Nashville, Hogberg and Highmore in NYI, Bleed, Dowling, Wolanski, Mackey, Brisson, and Pouliot in NYR, Groundsman Richard in Philadelphia, Bowers, Huntington, Olioson, Rigonda, and Skerrick in San Jose, LeBate, McEachran, Patera, Sheldon in Vancouver, and DiGiuseppe, Shaw, Bauer, and Phillips in Winnipeg. All be placed on waivers over the past couple of days. I thought there was a chance maybe a guy like Brisson could get claimed, maybe a guy like Olioson, McEachran, DiGiuseppe had a possibility, I think, Highmore had a possibility, Abuki Bell had a possibility, potentially Osterley. I thought Gunler had a chance to be claimed, as well as Jan Kuznetsov. However, all of those guys I just mentioned cleared, and there was one guy who was officially claimed off of waivers, so we had our first waiver claim from our past couple of days, and it was Tyson Jost. Jost, who I think just signed a 1 or 2 year deal in Carolina this offseason to remain with the Carolina Hurricanes, was placed on waivers and was claimed by the Nashville Predators. So I'm not too surprised there, because the Predators could definitely use some more forward help. I was just talked about Matthew Woods injured, so they could definitely use some more guys to round out the bottom 6. So they claimed Jost, so a very interesting claim here. I think Jost can be a solid 13th, 14th forward, maybe a 4th liner. So interesting claim there. And then also Christian Jaros was placed on waivers, unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. So after Jaros and Columbus came to terms on a deal in the offseason to bring Jaros back to North America after he'd been playing overseas, they have agreed to terminate their contract. Now Jaros will be without a contract, so very interesting note there. Well, there have been a handful of players who have just been placed on waivers, including Sweezy in Boston, Amadot and Gushchin in Colorado, Dries, Lageson, Leonard, Mitchell, Shine, Watson in Detroit, Skoog, Foote, and Entwistle in Florida, Bolduc, Brown, Chromiak, Copley, Godin, Gutman, Hiccups, Lee, and Thomas, and Ward in Los Angeles, England and Nashville, Peterson in Philadelphia, Gillies in San Jose, Abruzzese, Kachok, and Pelletier in Tampa, Stalber in Utah, Belpidio, Clark, Rybinski, Cherniev in Washington, and Anderson-Dolan, Clegg, and Fagimo in Winnipeg were all recently just placed on waivers. I don't know if they've cleared or not yet, so the guys who I could see be claimed out of this group would be a guy like Nolan Foote in Florida, would be a guy like maybe Sam Bolduc in Los Angeles, maybe a guy like Akil Thomas in Los Angeles, maybe a guy like Abruzzese in Tampa, or Pelche in Tampa, or maybe a guy like Stalber in Utah, or Jared Anderson-Dolan in Winnipeg. I think all stand very good chances to get claimed. But once again, with all the waivers that we've seen over the past couple of days, wouldn't be surprised if most or all of these guys wound up getting cleared. So very interesting out there, but those are all the waiver updates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of very interesting pieces of news. So first, when it comes to some players being released off of PTOs, Kevin LeBanc and Oliver Shillington, who are on PTOs with the Carolina Hurricanes, have both been cut. So very interesting out there. LeBanc and Shillington are now going to be UFAs. We'll see if they get a contract before season starts, but at this current point in time, they're no longer in the Carolina's training camp, so very interesting note there. We saw a couple of players retire over the past couple of days. Max Pacioretty, who has recently joined University of Michigan coaching staff, has retired, as well as Eric Johnson. So Johnson had a really long and illustrious career, having 95 goals, 348 points, and 1,023 NHL games, won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, so he was a really solid player for the Avalanche. He also had a couple of other stints in teams like Philadelphia and a couple of other teams, so very interesting note there. But Eric Johnson has decided to hang up the skates, as has Max Pacioretty, who retires having 335 goals for, 681 points in 939 games. He was a really solid player for the Habs. Also for the Golden Knights, and then later on to his career with teams like Carolina, Washington, recently Toronto. So very interesting note there. But Max Pacioretty and Erik Johnson, who weren't able to find new contracts with other teams, have officially called it quits. And on top of that, Pacioretty's gone and joined the coaching staff in the University of Michigan. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to Evgeny Kuznetsov. We talked about a little while ago in a couple of videos about how there was some interest in Evgeny Kuznetsov after he terminated his KHL contract and that he wanted to try and make an NHL return. Well, apparently that's not going to happen at least this year. Kuznetsov has signed a one-year contract back in the KHL, so it seems like he wasn't able to get any sort of a contract at the NHL level from other teams, and he's gone back over to the KHL. So very interesting note there, but Kuznetsov has gone back to the KHL to play over in Russia. According to a couple of recent reports, Jason Robertson will be waiting for a potential contract extension. He's not going to be discussing the contract in season, and he says that he's all right with waiting this out. So Robertson's a pending RFA. There was a lot of trade talk around him this offseason regarding the Dallas Stars. Now, no trade obviously came from it, but Robertson's going to probably get, after all of the signings we've seen recently, about like 12, 13, maybe even a $14 million contract in the offseason. So I think the Stars really wanted to get something done before the start of the season, and now it seems like Robertson won't be discussing contracts in season. So very interesting note there, but don't expect a Jason Robertson extension at any point during the season. And lastly, going over to a couple of younger players who could potentially make the roster. We talked about this a couple of days ago with Koivunen in Pittsburgh and Laba in NYR. Another couple guys who could wind up making the team are Brunicke in Pittsburgh and Cootes in Vancouver. Now, Cootes is a little bit of a surprising one. It was the 15th overall pick in the 2025 draft. You don't usually see players who are taken outside the top 10 make it the year after they were taken in the draft. We saw a couple of times though, like Lundestrom all those years back, and Anaheim did it. Hanel at least got a stint at the NHL level just after he was drafted. More recently, Zach Benson in Buffalo and Cole Sillinger in Columbus both did it and actually played a full season. And Cootes has actually looked not too bad in the preseason, so that could be a really solid pickup there for the Canucks. It could also help them down the middle in the center position because Cootes is a center. Well, Brunicke is a 19-year-old defensive prospect for the Pittsburgh Penguins, a recent draft selection. I think he's going to be a really solid player at the NHL level. It seems like the Penguins will at least give him a look at the NHL level. I think long-term he's going to be a solid top four defenseman. I think at this point, though, he could even be a suitable third pair of defensemen for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So very interesting note there, but the Brunicke and Cootes could potentially make their team's rosters for the Canucks and the Penguins, which is very interesting news. Those are all the news updates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of trade updates. So we got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First, when it comes to the Chicago Blackhawks, Frank Seravalli was talking about Chicago recently, and he says that he expects Lukas Reichel to be moved in the next couple of days leading up to the start of the season. He says that he doesn't think that the Hawks are going to keep Lukas Reichel on their roster. He thinks that they're going to try and find some sort of a trade for him. He's got, I think, 1 year left. He's going to be RFA next year at a $1.1 million cap hit. So it's a very cheap player. There's been a lot of linkage to Edmonton, given the fact Stan Bowman, who's now the current GM of the Edmonton Oilers, was the guy who drafted him. Some other recent speculations have said that guys like Vancouver and maybe even Detroit could have some interest in a guy like Lukas Reichel. So those could be some very interesting landing spots. Reichel is a guy who can play left wing. He can play center. He's a guy who can, at his current point in time, be a solid like third line forward. Maybe could eventually play a second line forward if he can find his stride. Like, he was a high draft pick a couple of years back and really hasn't lived up to the hype in Chicago. So it seems like the Blackhawks really want to try and move on from him. So do look out for a Reichel trade in the next couple of days, as it seems like Lukas Reichel will get moved at some point before the season starts. So keep your eye on that. Going over to the Colorado Avalanche, according to Frank Seravalli as well, he says that the Avalanche, he feels like, are in the same sort of position they were last year with Mikko Rantanen with Martin Necas. He says that at this current point in time, Necas has not been willing to sign a contract extension, and he says they could easily still sign Necas at some point during the season or even in the off season, but he says they are in a similar wait and see pattern that they were last year with Mikko Rantanen. We know how the Rantanen situation went. They wound up trading him in season, and they wound up getting first round exited because of Rantanen playing in Dallas. So are they going to move Martin Necas again? I think it's a possibility. If they get to February or March, closer to the trade deadline, Necas isn't signed, he doesn't want to sign, I think the Avalanche will be in a really tough position. They may have to move Martin Necas. They can't let Necas walk as UFA, just so they couldn't let Rantanen walk as UFA last year. They need to either sign Necas and figure out some way to make it work, or they need to extend it. And with Kaprizov recently getting that $17 million cap hit, Necas is probably going to want $11 or $12 million, which will be right around the same cap hit that Rantanen got from Dallas. So the Avalanche have a lot of thinking to do, but I do see the similarities between this year's situation with Necas and last year's situation with Rantanen, so I can see why Frank Seravalli would say that. And we'll have to keep our eye on the Avalanche, because if it gets closer to the trade deadline, no extensions in place, I think we could really see a Martin Necas deal at some point this season. So keep your eye on the Avalanche, as it could be in a similar spot as they were last year with Rantanen, with Martin Necas. And lastly, here going over to Dougie Hamilton. Frank Seravalli was talking about him as well. Now I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming video, talking about a couple of recently big signings. But earlier today, we did see Luke Hughes sign a new deal, 8 years times $9 million. I'll be doing a little more in-depth analysis of that in an upcoming video. But it was a very interesting deal. It was finally able to get done. It was one of the big RFAs that needed to get done, and it was finally done for the New Jersey Devils. So very good stuff there. But that has led a lot of people recently to speculate that with him now making $9 million, that could be a ticking time bomb on Dougie Hamilton's time in New Jersey. Hamilton's, I think, got 2 or 3 years left on his deal, also a $9 million cap hit. With all the younger players in New Jersey on their blue line starting to come up, like Nemec, like Casey, they're going to have to move at some point, a defenseman, and with the high cap hit of Dougie Hamilton, that seems to be a very likely potential guy to get moved. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be happening this year, but Frank Seravalli does say that he thinks that Dougie Hamilton will be on trade boards later on into the season. So, I mean, it's a possibility, especially if the Devils really wanted some sort of a forward upgrade in season. Moving Hamilton to get a forward upgrade might be a very smart move there from the Devils. And if it's not during the season or by the trade deadline, they do wonder maybe if next offseason Hamilton gets moved. I think there's a very likely chance, especially with the Hughes contract, that Hamilton's time in New Jersey is coming to an end. And while I don't think it's going to happen before the season starts, I do think either by the trade deadline or sometime next offseason, we will see Dougie Hamilton move. But Frank Seravalli is saying that he expects Dougie Hamilton to be on the trade boards at some point this season. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But that's what I want to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think Hamilton gets moved at some point after the Luke Hughes extension? Do you think the Avalanche are in the same boat as they are with Martin Necas, as they were last year with Mikko Rantanen? And do you think that Lukas Reichel will get moved before the start of the season? Definitely touch on all of that, plus all of the news updates, the training camp cuts, the waiver updates, and the injury updates. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'm going to tell you this video, and for your like to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.